What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Jake here at Nerd Level Rising. I'm very, very excited for this video. I've been thinking about this for a long time. You may have noticed over the last couple months, every Saturday I've been dropping a Sun Eater video. We did recaps of each of the books. I talked about the novellas and the short stories. I talked about the themes. I talked about why I love the series so much. I ranked all the books, and now it's time to talk about our predictions and our burning questions for book 7. That is almost here. The release of Shadows Upon Time is nigh, and it's time to throw out our crazy theories about where it might go. And I reached out to a bunch of friends, and I was like, hey man, please send me your thoughts, send me your questions, send me your predictions, and I'll put together a big collaboration video, and we'll put it out there. It'll be a team effort to describe all of these things. And let me just say, there are some very interesting thoughts that people are throwing out there. So I'm really curious to see everybody watch this and then throw out some stuff in the comments. That'll be really interesting to see what all of you think. Also, stay tuned until the very end of this video, because there may be a special appearance there at the end that you don't want to miss. And so with that said, let's jump in. Here we go.
Hey Jake, thanks a bunch for having Rich and I on to discuss our Book 7 Sun Eater Shadow Upon Time predictions. We each have a prediction prepared. Yep. You want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
But I do want to preface this whole thing with, I find it fascinating with how the whole series has been set up, with you knowing the ending from the very first page and the very first chapter of the series. You know Hadrian's going to blow up the sun, and you know Hadrian's going to go to Colchis in exile, writing his manuscript. That's how the series ends. So in many ways, it's kind of hard to come up with these predictions since we know the ending already. However, we do have a couple things. So yeah, I'm a subscriber of the belief that Princess Selene is actually with Hadrian in some way, that the relationship between them is far more intimate than what Hadrian is willing to say in his memoir, mainly due to protect Princess Selene physically, in her current status, or maybe to protect her memory in some kind of ideal. So I think we're going to be able to find out, piece things together, that the present day with Hadrian on Colchis, that he's actually not alone, and that maybe Princess Selene is with him. And so we may find Princess Selene may die in the book, but not really. That's my thought.
I like that. And like you said, Book 7, we know so much of what's going to happen. We know the sun gets destroyed. This is the Journey Before Destination book. Just what's going to happen? How does Hadrian get to this point? I'm not going to predict the larger stuff. I have a more micro thing that I'm really itching for, because in a prior book where Hadrian was talking to the emperor, it was mentioned that these writings from the first emperor's wife are in 3 different locations. I think I'm getting that right. And in one of the locations, there's a manuscript on Old Earth. I hope that in this next book, we get to see Old Earth and visit Old Earth in some way.
I think we will, because for most of the series, Old Earth was destroyed. Old Earth is lost. It doesn't exist anymore. And the Emperor just casually drops it like, oh yeah, it's still on I've kept it, it's still on Old Earth. What do you mean still? It still exists? We gotta be going
Was
back.
the Chantry closing this off from the public that Old Earth is still around?
Now, why would they? Why would they keep Old Earth secret?
We'll see.
My guess is they have trapped a bunch of Americani are stuck on Old Earth, and that they have been able to isolate it, but they can't fully rid it.
It's kind of like not Vergosus. What's the first planet that we see in Book 6?
Oh shoot! What is that planet?
The first
in
of
book
3 parts.
6,
Yeah,
the one where the god or the
Watcher.
The Watcher
Yeah.
is. But yeah.
But hey,
You got me point.
prediction is we're going to Old Earth next book. We're gonna see it, and if that doesn't happen, I'm totally fine with it not happening. Whatever Rockio does, I'm excited for, and we're starting the book literally in a couple weeks. We've had the arc, but have not touched it. We want to be fresh for the gala.
Yep.
And
we're going to
come
basically read
fresh.
it, and then we're going to finish reading right before we head to the gala, so it'll be fresh on our mind. We're so excited.
Jake, thanks a bunch.
Hey, Jake, thanks so much for inviting us. So I've been racking my brain to think about what I think is going to happen and maybe what I'd like to see happen. And I have no idea. I don't know what's going to happen. I go in book after book thinking, "Oh my gosh, I think I have a clear-cut idea of where this is going." And young Mr. Rocchio always takes me somewhere else. I have no idea. I just wrapped up the ending of Disquiet Gods, and it's like, I did not see that coming. That was both heart-wrenchingly heartbreaking and at the same time disgusting, to where I felt like I needed to go take a walk and a nap, or maybe have a little juice box and a nap or something. I don't know what he has planned. I know his son's going to get eaten, and I can't wait to see how that happens. And as far as projections of what I want to do, I want him to run like a boy in the field and go crazy and land this plane exactly how he wants it to land. I don't want anyone else to have any say whatsoever. I want it all direct output from the mind of Christopher Rocchio. So I'm the worst person to ask these two questions of.
Wow. What a way to validate your reasoning for being here.
What do you got?
Here's the thing. I'm not caught up, full disclosure. I'm like 10 to 15 pages of the way to the end of Ashes of Man. My big prediction is like, okay, Hadrian is gonna eat his son. That's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I would feel like is just the last little thread that needs to be cut before this guy loses his mind and eats a son and does this big betrayal and all this prophesied stuff. Valka's gotta die. That's gotta happen, right? That's gotta be the only thing that would push him all the way out into the dark side to commit this horrible act. And I'm at this part of Ashes of Man where it's like, Valka's dead. Is she? I don't know. It felt
Just
like...
read the last 10 to 15 pages, you doofus. I want to know this. Read the last 10 to 15 pages of Ashes of Man. What are you doing?
The ending
what
to
are you
your,
doing with your life?
The ending to your prediction is I'm the worst person to have asked this question, and the ending of my predictions and things I wanted to see is just like you negating everything that I
It's
said.
like you've got the shoes on, Dorothy. You've got the last 10 to 15 pages. Pick up the book, click your heels 3 times, and get all your answers. You're such a goober, man.
We're not in our own home. We shouldn't be fighting right now. Thank you for having us, Jake. It was lovely to be here.
Hi, Jake. It's Jordan here from iWizard. So you asked for a couple of predictions or burning questions that I have for the release of Shadows Upon Time. And I just thought I would start by mentioning first for your listeners that I will be down in North Carolina for the release of that book. I'll be on a panel down there with Tuta Ramble and Mike and John from Talking Story as well. And I'll be reading Shadows Upon Time, hopefully on the plane trip down there. So anyways, predictions or burning questions. Just a couple of things. We've all been on this journey together with Hadrian. So like all of you, I am, of course, looking forward to getting the fulfillment of the promises made at the beginning of the book. We learn on page 1 that Hadrian is the man who murdered a son, who defeated the bloodthirsty Cielcin, who lives in infamy for having ripped the heart out of a star. And so I want to know how that's going to resolve, obviously. I'm looking forward to whatever final showdown with the Cielcins that Christopher has in store, especially since we get this teaser in the blurb on the back of the book that Hadrian will possess the power of an ancient war machine forged by the daemon machines at the dawn of time, the mighty Demiurge. So that's pretty cool. I've heard that we're going to learn more about the Chantry in this book, this mysterious organization that's always lurked behind the scenes or in the shadows and has always been sort of a quasi-antagonist for Hadrian. I know Christopher has said that there's a character in Book 7 that wasn't part of any plan at all, but who appeared very early on in the book and in the series and makes a return. So one question I have is, who is that? And how important is this character going to be to the resolution of the story? I have questions about the Watchers and the Quiet, and of course how their dynamic will shape the course of the universe. And I would just say I would love to get more answers in Book 7 7 to the cosmological and religious questions of Sun Eater. When it comes down to it, is the Quiet the supreme godhead, and the Watchers, are we meant to see them as angels? And is Hadrian this Cyrus-like biblical figure? Is that who he's meant to be? Do we get more answers about that? And I guess lastly, I'm just looking forward to seeing just ultimately what becomes of Hadrian and where that leads us. And will there be a door left open for new stories in the future? Because this is a series that I am going to read over and over again, and I can't wait to see how the main story wraps up. So thanks again, and appreciate you having me on. Bye.
Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan from Words in Time, and Jake has kindly asked me to share one thing I want to see in Shadows Upon Time. Guys, what happened to Switch? I don't know if we're going to get the answer to this question, but to be honest, I have a Switch-size hole in my heart, and I do not think I'm going to be okay if we never get the answer to that question. Now, I know the rift between Switch and Hadrian is polarizing. Personally, I think Switch probably shouldn't have done what he did, but I think his heart was in the right place, and I think Hadrian overreacted. So, there you go. I think mine's a bit of a long shot for the series. We'll see how it all ends, coming up pretty soon with the release of Shadows Upon Time.
Hello, Jake. Thank you for having me on. And, alright, let's get to the Sun Eater theories, yeah? It's pretty crackpot, by the way. just as a heads up. It's pretty nuts. Now, we know certain things about the actual occurrence of having breakfast with the sun. Or, well, it's like snack time, really, yeah? Now, I think that what's going to be so interesting is that he's on a ship, and I think that rules out one possible theory, and that is the eating of the sun is not done by Hadrian going whoosh, 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 abracadabra, bam, like Darth Vader, or like, what's his name? God dang it, Palpatine, like, draining the power from a star and just going, wow! No. that's not happening. Now, it's going to be interesting because he doesn't get to do that. I mean, sure, you could say, well, why would I think that? Well, I mean, he's got the powers from the Quiet. Why wouldn't he be able to just grab a star and go, hello, Siriani Doriaga! Pow! I mean, could you really blame me for thinking that's a possible theory? But he's on a ship, so I don't think that's a very valid theory. Or at least from what I remember of the prologue, he's on a ship. And that he watched that dying star. And so, you ready for the crackpot stuff? Karn Sagara's split at the very end of Disquiet Gods was pretty insane. I think we can take this another step further. We're in Gododin. Why are we in Gododin? That's a great question. Great. Thank you for asking that, metaphorical character. Why are we on Gododin? So, I think there is a weapon on Gododin that can help kill either the Quiet or Siriani's god. Here's the thing. I think that weapon is one of the Mercani. Yes, I think that one of those weapons, because, I mean, they've been built up as a weapon throughout the series. And imagine how absolutely bonkers it would be if Karn Sagara knew there was a Mercani on Gododin. So, Hadrian lures Siriani and his entire people to come kill him on Gododin, and instead uses one of the Mercani demons to eat up the sun, breakfast, bacon and eggs, all the whole shebang, and just use the power of spinach and bow! Like Popeye. I mean, that, I feel like, would be a pretty cool way of ending the series. Like, that's batshit nuts and pretty insane. Like, it feels like it works. Because we've been building up the Mercani all throughout the series, and we've seen very, very few of them. I think we've seen 2. And we know how vile and villainous they can be, and how they can just destroy things so easily. And I think that one of them is hidden on Gododin, and that is what is going to mean snack time or dinner time or whatever you want to call it for Hadrian Marlowe. Shebang. All right. Thank you for having me on. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rick Thunder. I'm back, and that's a fact. Okay, so Jake from Nerd Level Rising asked me, hey Rick Thunder, Shadows Upon Time by the great Christopher Rocchio is coming out this November, that's right. And he wanted me to give you predictions on what I think is gonna happen. Now here's the thing, I have not read Sun Eater at all, but I do have this book in front of me called Disquiet Gods. And if there's one thing that I like about gods, it's when they're super disquiet. Because I'm Rick Thunder, and that's a fact, and I want things loud. Okay, so, being that as it may, here are my predictions for Shadows Upon Time in the Sun Eater. Okay, so if you're gonna eat the sun, you know you're gonna need to be in the sun. So I would bring some sunscreen, and I think that there's going to be a lot of sunscreen in the Shadows Upon Time. Then I think there's also going to be, because once you get out of the sun, and I'll tell you a story about it in a minute, and that's a fact, you're going to want to have some moisturizer to get out of the sun. Now, this one time when the band Duran Duran, that's right, Duran Duran was filming the music video in the 80s called Rio, and it was on Rio de Janeiro Beach, and they asked me, they said, hey Rick Thunder, why don't you come be in the video with us? And I said, okay, cool, and I did, and I forgot to bring this, and I forgot to bring that, and you know what happened? It was awful. I couldn't even be in the video, I was so burned. In fact, Rick Thunder was almost as red as my jacket, and that's a fact. Okay, so what else is gonna be in the book? Well, you know if you're gonna be eating the suns, you gotta protect your eyes. And that's why me, Rick Thunder, is gonna be wearing, probably in the book, maybe not, I don't know, I haven't talked to the author yet, but he might have put me in there, is gonna put the sunglasses, right? Because just like they say, you gotta wear your sunglasses at night, but you also gotta wear them when you're eating the sun. And that's a fact.
All right, gang, we're here to talk about Sun Eater and expectations going into Shadows Upon Time. We have the gala coming up in November. Jake has been putting together some fantastic recap videos to catch you people up on, the fans up on what's going on in Sun Eater. Spoiler filled. What am I looking forward to in Shadows Upon Time? Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to what was given to us on page 1 of Empire of Silence. I'm looking forward to seeing the sun be eaten. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chance, the sun doesn't literally get eaten, but, I mean, we don't know that. What if somebody, maybe the Emperor, sits down, takes out a fork, spork, and knife, and literally starts cutting into the sun? And Hadrian was lying the whole time. You ever think about that? I'm also looking forward to seeing, potentially, maybe some roundabout. Maybe it's a vision through the quiet. Maybe it's something that we get to see of some other Marlowe relatives working their way back into Hadrian's lives. I feel like that might not happen, and it's not a do or die for me. It's just something that I like a little maybe Easter egg I'd be happy to see. And there actually was a character introduced in, I believe it's Ashes of Man, that I want to see a little more of, and I've been told that we will see more of. I don't know if they're in Tales of Sun Eater 4. That is actually next up on my reads. Maybe the Shadows Upon Time arc is in there, so then I can get the answers to these queries sooner. But yeah, I mean, I'm really just looking forward to seeing how Christopher Rocchio masterfully rounds out this series. There's no doubt in my mind that we have an all-time great on our hands in the Sun Eater. Obviously, I love this series, if you can't tell. Now, Jake, I wanted to thank you so much for putting together these thoughtful videos. I know maybe I didn't add a lot to the conversation besides a spork and a knife, but I'm grateful that you're doing this, and I just wanted to send this over. Oh, by the way, little plug for Jake from Nerd Level Rising. He has a Patreon. You guys should go sign up for that. I'm a member. That's all you need to know. How do you end these things?
All right, so Jake asked for my predictions on the ending of Shadows Upon Time. I'm not a big theory crafting person and piecing everything together before it happens in the book, but I do have a few thoughts just in anticipation for the ending. The first thing that I'd say is I think it's kind of odd that we haven't had as a massive question all the way along, what does sun eating even mean? Technically, what even is that? We just kind of take it for granted as sun destroying. but it's specifically not called like Sun Destroyer or Sun, Annihilator or something. It's like Eater, like consume, like to eat. And maybe that's just hyperbole, but it's kind of odd that is the phrase that has been used to brand the whole series. So this may be just one big wild goose chase, but I've kind of wondered what that's going to look like in book 7. In Disquiet Gods, it is revealed that Alistair Marlowe is dead. That, of all the side characters, Alistair was the one that I was expecting to pop up in some way, shape, or form. So before Disquiet Gods, my theory would have been that he was going to reappear before the end of the series, but I'm not sure if he will anymore. Honestly, if I had to put one big thing out there, though, that was like here's the thing that I don't know if people are expecting. I think the answer to the Cielson problem will be a lot different than people think. Because we've got sort of this issue with the Cielson where it's sort of initially posed in a Ender's Game style, like most modern sci-fi, where it's like, basically like The Witcher, of like, what if humans were the real monsters? I'm 14 and this is deep, and that's like Hadrian's original position. And then the farther we get into the series, we almost come to the point of view of like, oh, there's nothing redeeming here. Like, this is so, like, the malevolence and the chaos and the evil from this has to be stopped. Like, no question. And Hadrian is the man to do it. So, we sort of get that image of it. And then by Disquiet Gods, we get a bit of a different view of the Cielson, where some of them have been sort of like co-opted, have been taken under Hadrian's wing, are fighting on his side. And so I think, because some people have objected to it, that it's just blanket, like, black and white, of like, okay, the humans are all good, and the Cielson are all evil. And I think that's very overly simplistic, for perhaps obvious reasons that I hope I wouldn't have to explain, certainly on the human side, but I think even on the Cielson side, I think there's some more things going on there that people won't expect. So the answer to the question of Cielson and their evil and how they're being controlled, I'm not sure how Rockio is going to resolve that, but I think that's one that will surprise some people, especially for people, because I've heard a number of people recently who said they DNF'd the series or got discouraged by the series after that arc in like book 4 and 5, when it's like, oh, there's nothing good about the Cielson. And I think Rockio is, I don't think that's fully where he's going, and Disquiet Gods is my main evidence for that. So that's the biggest thing in terms of like a theory or a thought about where we're going. But really, for book 7, I'm just along for the ride. The early reviews have gotten me nothing but excited for it. Even the people who haven't been too hot on it have described the reasons as to why they don't like it, and it just makes me even more interested to see, where Rockio is going to take this. I got the pleasure of talking to sci-fi fantasy editor Sean Korsgaard on my channel a couple of months ago, and he was talking about Christopher a little bit because they're friends, and he got to read Shadows Upon Time early and got to review it for a publisher that he was working with. And Sean's statement was, he said, everybody compares Christopher, or at least has so far, his work to Frank Herbert, to Gene Wolfe, and he said, I don't think it will be long after Shadows Upon Time and the future work that he writes before we will be comparing them to him and wondering if their work is as good as his stuff, because his stuff has just so far surpassed it. So we'll see. Who knows? That's high praise coming from Sean. But I'm nothing but excited for the ending of this and what Christopher chooses to do in the future.
Jake, thank you so much for including me in this video, because the dirty little secret is I'm technically not all of the way caught up. I'm currently sitting at about halfway through Disquiet Gods. So we will see if my predictions and some things that I want come true before the end of this book, or if I actually have some good thoughts going into the final book. So first off, my first prediction is going to be that we get an afterlife scene where Hadrian sees the Red Company, Falca, and Gibson kind of all as a wrapped up thing. And I think the way that we get to that scene is I still think he's going to end up getting assassinated. So obviously I know we are writing this in like he's writing this and we're seeing him tell the story, but I still just have this feeling that he's going to get got in the end, but not in the kind of like evil way that the Chantry has worked and everything. I think it's going to be much more of a, you're finally here, you're finally going to give me this relief. I've been waiting for this to happen. It's kind of like the last thing that I need to do to like finish this journey. It's going to be the actual end, the bookmark of the journey. So I still think those are kind of like my two predictions that we're going to have on. So we're going to have like a long afterlife scene, and we're going to get to that because Hadrian does actually end up getting assassinated. And then just a few things that I want, which isn't a lot. I'm super bad at predictions and like thinking of things that I want. I think it's one of the reasons why I could never be a writer. But one thing that I would like to see is a flash forward, like far, far into the future, where maybe Asclepius is looking back at this tale that Hadrian has written, and it's almost like, is any of this even real? Like, I would love to see time played with in a way that, time has been played with throughout this entire series, but played with in a way that we haven't seen, and just like get a different perspective, because obviously this has all been from Hadrian. And so I think getting a perspective of the world and this story from somebody who's so far removed from it would be rather interesting and something cool. And then just selfishly, I would love more of the Americani. I think that is some of the most interesting stuff in all of Sun Eater, and we get just such the smallest little bits of it throughout the series. So like one hope that I would love is that Rocchio does like a prequel where we talk about that time way more in depth, and we get to deal with those like supercomputer things, because to me that is super interesting. So I would love to see some of that play a role in the ending of this series, because I don't know, it would just be, to me, an awesome thing to get, because it's so anti the Imperium and just everything. I think would be a really cool thing. So hopefully none of that gets answered in the rest of book 6. Like I said, still working on that. And thanks again, Jake.
Now, of course, I got to throw my hat in the ring too, right? There's no way that I can miss this opportunity to throw out my own theories. And so let me throw out some questions first, and I'll have a prediction there at the end. So question number 1, is there a Watcher on Emesh? I think there might be, but of course I don't know. But I'm wondering if we're going to figure this out in book 7, because we've seen the ruins on Emesh, that like weird black stone stuff that Hadrian walked through. He had the crazy visions initially, right? We've seen that same material on UA when they were in the bones of Mayudanar, and we saw this stuff, right? We saw it on what is it called? Sabratha in Disquiet Gods, where they went in and they found the hand that was made of this stuff, right? And it was the bones of the Watcher. This black material was the bones of the Watcher. Are there Watcher bones on Emesh? Maybe it's a dead Watcher, right? I don't know. Or maybe it's a sleeping one, but or maybe it's something completely different. But that's my guess. That's my theory. I want to know, is there a Watcher there? Is it going to come into the fold? We'll see. Speaking of book 1, I also want to know, is salt important? The homunculus from book 1 that was on the ship that was taking Hadrian from Delos to wherever he was trying to go, and eventually he wound up on Emesh. This little guy wound up showing up in Disquiet Gods when Hadrian was killed by the Chantry and he melted onto the ground, and he woke up and he found Rag and Salt. Why was Salt there? Why was he there? And then he went away, and it was just Rag, who eventually Hadrian saw was Ragama, this other Watcher. That I want to know what's going on with Salt. Why was he there? Is he important? Why was he on that ship going from Delos to who knows where? Like what's up with Salt? I gotta know. A couple questions about Disquiet Gods as well. One, we saw Cassandra have her arm cut off at the end. How is she going to deal with that, right? She's a Maeskilo sword master. She's used to fighting with 2 swords. How is this going to go? Is she going to, be bitter and angry and all this sort of stuff? Is she just going to bounce back and be okay? Is she going to have to learn how to fight with just one arm now? And we're going to see like an arc of that. How is all that going to go? I can't wait to see what happens with Cassandra in book 7. I have no idea. I have some ideas of what Hadrian, obviously we know at least something Hadrian's going to do, but I don't know what to think about. I don't know what to expect from Cassandra. So I'm really curious about that, and with the one-armed fighting thing. And the other is when Selena was with Hadrian and Herendites and Lorien, and after Hadrian died, all those people left, and Hadrian sort of woke back up. He was reborn. And they realized that Emperor William thought that they had kidnapped Selena. And so Herendites was able to use her as a bargaining chip to send her back in exchange for, in this case, he got like 1,000 planets or something from Emperor William of the Empire to expand his horizons, right? He was able to secure that. But he died, right, in Disquiet Gods. And so now I'm curious, what happens to those planets? Is it still part of the Lataran Empire? Who is going to be leading the Lataran Empire? Is it Lorien? Maybe is he going to take, because he really believed in Herendites, and he seemed like he's really high up in that regime, and so I don't know, is all that going to fall apart and William's going to take control of them back? That feels like that could be super important. And so I'm curious what happens with that. And then my final question, before I get to my prediction, is are we going to see more Watchers show up and be in the fold? Is Regama going to show up and like interfere and like sort of be on the good side, quote unquote, and help Hadrian? Will other Watchers, are there others that are alive? What's going to happen with this? Is Ushara going to directly act next to Doriaika? And is she going to be a real player? Is Doriaika actually ascended to Watcher status at this point? I don't know, right? So I'm curious about all those things. I can't wait to see what's going on with all of that. And just as we barrel towards this explosive ending of the series. But speaking of the ending, I have a thought here. This is my prediction, okay? Everybody, when we read a framing narrative, we're like, okay, well, we know the ending of the story. We know, in this case, that Hadrian blew up the sun and he ended the war. He killed all these Cielsen, and now he's sitting at Colchis and he's telling us his story. He's writing his story down. That's the ending. Is that the ending? I don't know. My theory is that we're going to follow that through, and we're going to see the point where Hadrian is on Gadadin, and when he destroys the sun, he ends the war, and he goes to Colchis. He's in exile or whatever, right? And he's telling us the story. But I wonder, will we get to the point where he finishes telling us the story, and then we switch, and we're no longer in first-person Hadrian narration, we switch to third-person or maybe somebody else's first-person point of view, and we see the actual ending of the story. We see what happens to Hadrian at the end. We see what happens to wrap this whole thing up. That maybe Hadrian is telling us the story isn't the actual ending. We'll see the end of him telling us the story, and we'll see something beyond that that wraps everything up. That is my prediction, that we will have a section at the end that's not through Hadrian's POV, and that will be the ending of the story. And I think this because, one, Rocchio really likes to play with our expectations, and he really likes to play with this idea that we think Hadrian has plot armor. We think that because it's a framing narrative that we expect XYZ, and he's killed Hadrian twice, right? And we didn't expect either one. He really likes to play with what we're expecting, what we're not expecting. He also has mentioned in an interview, people will say, we already know the ending, blah, blah, blah. And Christopher has said, well, do you know the ending though? Hadrian tells you his story, but do we know the ending? I don't know. And so I'm like, okay. So this is my prediction. We shall see in just a few short days when we all get our hands on that book and we can blast through towards the end and see where it wraps up. So those are my questions. Those are my predictions.
Interesting. Very interesting. We'll see soon.